Hey there. I offer this podcast freely. Your support really makes a difference. To make a donation, visit reneemckenna.com. Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee LaValle McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about the hero and the victim. And these are energies that we all have inside of us. In literature and movies and mythology, they are characters that represent foundational elements in the human experience. So we're all heroes and we're all victims somewhere in our psyches. And they're based on archetypes, which is an idea that was presented by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. And archetypes manifest as universal patterns that transcend culture and history. When we look at mythology and stories across time, right up to modern media, archetypes are these recurring themes or symbols or character types that convey deeper truths about each of us. So the hero archetype embarks on a journey, faces challenges, achieves growth and transformation. And we could understand each of our lives as a hero's journey. In fact, I encourage you to consider your life as a hero's journey because it can really move us from that victim place, which I'm going to talk about in a little while, into a place of empowerment and inner heroism. That from the heroic perspective, we see the obstacles and difficulties of life as challenges to be overcome, rather than as circumstances that just beat us down and deplete us. And whether we're aware of it or not, we have actually infinite resources available to us for all different perspectives and energies that we can draw on to help us move through life. Just like each of our cells holds the DNA for our whole body, each human is an individuated unit of consciousness in a larger consciousness system. And we actually hold the keys to all universal source and force within us. Now, we may have lost the keys, or we may have hidden them, or we may not know where they are, but some of our work in our own hero's journey is to find those keys and open the doors to the resources for power, energy, healing, and wisdom that are available to all of us. And that's really what the basis of my spiritual psychology work and really any good therapy, transformative or spiritual path. We are all being led in growth, evolution, and expansion, growing in complexity and effectiveness if we're willing to do that. So our inner hero holds courage, integrity, and a willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. And what needs to be sacrificed a lot of times to be the hero of our own life is our limited ideas of who we are, the narratives about what's possible or not possible, and we need to face our own fears of success and failure, worrying about what the neighbors think. We often need to sacrifice our ego or our small self. We need to sacrifice the victim for the greater good. And it is my experience that as I grow and evolve, my consciousness, my empowerment, my courage to engage in the mystery of life, follow my quest of my hero's journey, that my own improvement, my own expansion actually helps those who are around me and the larger system. Because again, just like cells in a body, we are all part of something greater than ourselves. And the health of the individual cells determines the health of the whole body. And we can cultivate a heroic perspective because we have free will. And sometimes we have to use all the willpower and resources we have, including a lot of help from a lot of other people. And the essential quality of the hero is bravery or courage. Am I willing to face the dangers of life and overcome my fears? Or at least be willing to have the courage to face them and move through them. And the best way to cultivate courage is to do scary things. And I'm not necessarily talking about bungee jumping off a bridge, although go ahead if that's what you're into. Facing our fears could be asking my boss for a raise, having the difficult conversation with my lover about my dissatisfaction and unhappiness. Courage could be the willingness to step out into the dating world and become emotionally available. And from an internal standpoint, the hero and the victim within us need to work together. So the victim is the part of us that feels wounded or harmed, or the victim of injustice. The victim wants sympathy and concern and often has either overt or covert self-pity. The victim can be very passive, suffering quietly, but it's very important to discover and get conscious about our inner victim because we all have one, and it's often a secret even from us. And the suffering of our inner victim is often unconsciously driving the narratives and motives in our life. Our inner victim absolutely can manifest in our external relationships, particularly romantic relationships. If you feel victimized, misunderstood, disempowered, abused, gaslit, or any other of the destructive dynamics that can happen in a relationship, then you have easy access to your inner victim. And the victim part of ourself feels a lot of helplessness, believes that it lacks the power or the means to change our circumstances. So there's a hopelessness with the helplessness that's part of the devolving, destructive energy of the victim. Now, the victim holds essential innocence. It's often rooted in childhood dynamics where we really were victims and were undeserving of the suffering that we endured. And part of the heroic work of self-transformation is to rescue those innocent parts of ourselves that hold vital life energy to become our own healthy adult caregiver, our own inner hero, rather than keeping those parts locked away in the dungeon for safekeeping, bringing them up into the sunlight of the spirit, rescuing them from the depths, opening to our own innocent, vulnerable, creative, connected, curious life force. That's actually the essence of soul retrieval, which is central to my spiritual psychology work, very similar to inner child work in modern psychology. So the victim part of ourselves needs the hero in order to transform their suffering into strength. And the suffering of the victim can often be the catalyst for great change. And this is the gift of pain, is that if we're in a destructive or disempowered cycle, which is devolving, it's moving against the current of the life force, the pain of that destructive kind of downward spiral can become so excruciating that it actually pushes us past our fear of moving into the unknown and can create change. Now, many people that have a very active victim that's unconscious, I know this was a pattern for me, will project that outward and find other people that are victimized that they can rescue. And there's nothing wrong with that. Many people need rescuing on one level. And the downside of rescuing or being rescued by others is that we remain unconscious about the dynamics within ourselves and don't grow and evolve. We don't heal our own victim, connect with our own innocent, vulnerable, authentic self, which is really what we're here to bring into the world. That's the jewels that the hero is gathering and collecting. Reclaiming, maturing, and living from our authentic self is, I think, the quest of the human hero's journey. And so if you spend a lot of time concerned with other people's suffering, you might want to look and see if there is an inner victim that needs help within yourself. Now, that doesn't mean we don't help others. I dedicate my life in service of relieving the suffering of others. But if it doesn't include my own continued self-growth work, it becomes pathological. And I've had that happen. The shadow side of being a hero is a lack of conscious evolution of our own innocence within ourselves. And a lot of codependent relationships have a victim and a hero, and they're dependent upon each other. And the victim often gets victimier, and the hero often gets more empowered and controlling. And they can each become resentful, disconnected, and disempowered by the other and that dynamic. Because for the hero, there's too much outflow and not enough inflow. And for the victim, there's too much inflow and not enough outflow. In healthy relationships, we each are healthy units that come together voluntarily rather than two half people coming together to try to make a whole. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't need help from other people or God in the larger system. We absolutely do. And in fact, one of the places that keeps a lot of us stuck is feeling like we need to do everything ourselves. We're actually incapable of doing that, and we want to hide the victim part of ourselves, or perhaps hide the brave part, and we play either too big or too small. And on this plane of duality, balance is key. So the shadow side of the hero is the part that represses or denies our own fears or weaknesses or places we're out of integrity. And this balanced perspective is about facing and transcending, again, our own ego ideas of who we should be and confronting our humanity, our flaws and limitations, and also being willing to support and connect with the gifts and divine spark that live in that innocent part of ourselves that's often trapped within the victim. So the elevated aspect of our victim is our true, innocent, vulnerable, creative self. And the gift of the hero is the willingness to face and transcend these limitations that keep that innocent part of ourselves from the joy and fulfillment that it really needs in the world. So how do we be the hero of our own self? How do we move past the limitations of our inner victim and become more of who we really are in the world? So I encourage you to cultivate some courage, do something scary, doesn't have to be big, and confront and shine the light on that part of yourself that says, no way. I'm not doing that. We can't do that. It's not possible. Why bother? That's the victim. Thank you so much for listening. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee LaValle McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.